Alright Satsu, I'm ready for a bombastic journey across the world to take down the Brolly Corporation.
About that, turns out they may have destroyed themselves off screen.
Let me guess, death by unimaginable eldritch horror, destroyed by their own hubris, drowned by the consequences of their actions on podcasting as a whole.
Actually, it was surprisingly boring. They just ran out of money using their AI program.
Oh.
But now it means I have to reboot the entire Resident Evil month storyline. That, and ironically enough, our globe-trotting has caused a huge unrecoverable dent in our budget.
So where are we going this episode?
You are gonna love it. Someone actually reached out to me and said we could use the home in the middle of a Louisiana bayou.
A home? In the middle of nowhere? No strings attached?
And the best part is, free catering. Come on. What's the worst that could happen?
A few minutes later.
Okay, that didn't pan out exactly as I thought.
Mold people?
I mean, when I read that, I thought they were really into pottery. You know, like a Patrick Swayze ghost type thing.
How is that better? You know what? I've had it. This time I'll choose a recording location.
Yeah, like you could find a better. Ooh, an Eastern European castle in the middle of nowhere, hosted by super user Lady D. You know what? Maybe I was being selfish, trying to organise everything. Let's try it out. I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
The next day.
Don't say it.
Vampires.
Satsu.
Haunted dolls.
I said don't.
Rubik's Cube babies.
Welcome to Resident Evil month.
Hello everybody and welcome to the final episode of Resident Evil Month. My name's Satsunami and joining me today is none other than the one and only expert of mold himself. As for legal reasons, that's a joke, trust me, it's thematic. It's none other than Dan from Casting/Gaming Views. Dan, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. I've obviously not been banned yet, so...
No, not yet, but...
There's always the next episode.
Yes, I needed your expertise on mold knowledge for this episode, so clearly. But yeah, no, jokes aside, how are you doing tonight?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very good. Kind of interested to talk about these games. Well, mainly because I always say to people I tend not to like horror games. However, I've been on here, haven't I, talking about, it was Dead Space, wasn't it? And I've done the Callisto Protocol with the Game Club boys and playing these two games here with yourself. It turns out I love horror games.
Yeah, personally, I feel as if horror is quite a contentious genre. It's not a genre for everyone, I would say, but there is a horror game for everyone, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You know, I mean, look at kids playing Five Nights at Freddy's now, and let's face it, it was never for adults, was it?
No. It's interesting what you say about there being a game for everyone. I think that's absolutely spot on.
And I mean, especially for horror games, I am totally with you. When I did more streaming back in the past before I did the podcast, I would play, much to my own torture, games like Outlast, Little Nightmares, Condemned Criminal Origins. Each one gave me a right good jump scare. Phasmophobia, you know, those kind of games that absolutely terrified me. But I thought, you know what? I have to persevere. I've paid for the damn game. I'm going to do it. And I overcame my fears of the game. And even with Resident Evil 4, I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago with Joey from the Game Club pod. Resident Evil 4 Remake is the reason that I decided to do this month in the first place, because it was such a darn good game and I really wanted to go back and see what I was missing out on with this franchise. Some games better than others, some less scary than others. The only thing about 6 that was scary was probably the length of it and the fact it kept crashing, so I had to keep replaying certain bits. That was terrifying. But yeah, for this one that we're going to be talking about today, oh my god, it's terrifying.
It's really interesting, right? So, having a quite long gaming background, I had never really played the Resident Evil games. I think I'd possibly owned one, no, maybe two. I can't remember, but I'd owned it, but never played it. That wasn't because I didn't like horror games at the time. It's just my gaming journey avoided that console for a bit, or those games. The other thing, I'd always wanted to play Resident Evil 4. I remember reading the reviews of it when it came out, even though I didn't have the GameCube. But 4 was the one that really got my interest. But when they started remaking the games, so they remastered 1, didn't they? Then 2. I played those and really enjoyed those because they really did introduce improvements and quality of life improvements, didn't it? Make them fun. And yeah, it's been interesting playing them. Actually, having said that, I remember I did play 5 and 6 because they were on like the 360 at the time, weren't they? I think, or the Xbox One. But I really remember so very little about them other than a couple of controversies around them. And I think that probably says it all, doesn't it? Why I don't really remember them.
Because the funny thing about the series is when I was younger, my parents were very, very strict about the kind of games that I could play. So Resident Evil was a definite no-no, even though my brother had the first game for the PlayStation 1. I've still got it upstairs, mind you, but I've never played it myself. It sounds weird, and it's something I said to Joey as well a couple of weeks ago, but you just know what a Resident Evil game is, don't you? It has a certain aesthetic and everything. When you see it pop up, you go, oh, that's Resident Evil. You don't hesitate. You don't see a generic zombie game and go, oh, that's Resident Evil, because it's like there's something not quite right about it. Whereas when you see Resident Evil, you know that's Resident Evil. Even though I hadn't played them personally, I knew all about Leon going to the Spanish village, getting chased down by the chainsaw guy. I knew all about the controversies from Resident Evil 5 and especially 6, which we spoke about last week. So it wasn't a series I really got into that much, but I think I bought quite a few of them off of a Humble Bundle. I don't know why I bought it. I just thought, oh, I'd be interested in playing this sometime. So I picked it up. It sat in the backlog. It collected digital dust. I was like, right, okay, I'll leave it. And then, as I was saying earlier in the month, one of my friends bought me Resident Evil 4 Remake, and that just sparked my love of this franchise. I played that. I went back and did the Benjamin Button route. I went back to the second remake, the third remake. Then I think I played 6, 7, and 8, or rather 7, 8, and then 6. And then I played 5 with my friend, and then I played 1, you know. I did it completely out of order. It was all over the place. But you know what? I absolutely loved the experience and the journey. There's only 2 games in this franchise that I was genuinely terrified about starting. And you can probably guess the first one, but can you guess what the other one was?
Of the main numbered ones, the main entries?
Yeah.
I'd probably say 7 and... is it 2?
Bingo. Because my only experience of it was when I was on a call with my very good friend who I spoke to last week, Adam, and him and I and our other mutual friend as well, we would be playing different games, but we'd still be chatting to one another. So I'd be playing Call of Duty or something, my other friend would be playing something else, and Adam would be playing Resident Evil 2 Remake. And all we would hear very sporadically was just screaming down the microphone because he kept getting ambushed by Mr. X. And I kept saying, what are you screaming at? And he goes, oh, it's Mr. X. And I was like, who's Mr. X? So when it was my turn, I was like, oh God, I don't want to play this because I heard about Mr. X. I had seen him and the promotional stuff. I didn't want to play it and I was terrified throughout. So between that game, which terrified me with Mr. X, and especially this game gave me the fear for Resident Evil 7. It was horrifying. I'm not going to lie. See, as soon as I stepped foot into that Louisiana house, oh my God, absolutely terrified. 8, not so much, I'm going to be honest, bar one particular moment, which we will of course talk about. But yeah, before we get into the meat of this episode, or rather the mouldy meat of this episode, the development of 7 is quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, because you sent me a message earlier this week and I replied with some choice words, didn't I? About the kind of game they wanted it to be initially.
Yeah, they wanted a version of it to have microtransactions, didn't they? Yeah. How would that work? Is it like Jack would pin you to the wall and be like, oh, if you want to get free? Actually, sorry, I say that as a joke, but was there not a Harry Potter game like that years ago? It was like a mobile game, and there was like one particular scene you play as a student in Hogwarts or something, and there's one scene where it's like you're practically drowning in this water bubble, but you had to pay the game's equivalent of credits or whatever to get out of it.
I remember there was something like that. Yeah, absolutely.
It was just horrifying. And you think, oh, who would do that? That would be stupid. It's like, well, that game.
Yeah.
Resident Evil isn't too far a stretch to think that they would do it. But the reason that we've got Resident Evil 7 is, of course, because, let's face it, 2012 was a rather controversial year for games, you know. Around that time, we had Mass Effect 3, Dead Space 3, a lot of 3s, a lot of very action-oriented games, but in particular, the one that we had in 2012 specifically was Resident Evil 6, which, suffice to say, it wasn't very well received, was it?
No, yeah, there was a lot of articles on that one.
Yeah, because I think it did sell well, as far as I remember. I think financially it was a success, but yeah, the reviews weren't great for it, were they?
No, I think the issue started in 5 as well, but 6, it just felt like they became more action games, didn't it, rather than sticking to the roots of what had made them so popular with the fans.
Because what I will say is, I went back to replay the first game's remake, and I would say that probably has one of the best atmospheres in the entire series. And obviously, it's got some dated elements in it, but overall, I thought it captured the atmosphere perfectly, this sense of looming dread and whatnot. And don't get me wrong, this game has it, but for completely different reasons. You're right, they definitely moved away when they made 1 to 3. It was very much, oh, you're being hunted by Umbrella, and then 4 had a very tumultuous period where they eventually just settled from, oh, look, there's a guy with a hook climbing out a painting and things, to, oh yeah, let's just set it in a Spanish village and you have to rescue the president's daughter and things. And they made it quite campy and over the top, and they did the same with 5. It's kind of like the Terminator effect, where, like in Terminator 1 and 2, where the second one seems to be the peak in a lot of people's minds, but because it's so popular, everybody wants to copy that going forward. So there's elements of it in the third film, the fourth film, but the more they do that, the more diluted it becomes, until eventually you've just got a big bombastic action film with no real substance, or in this case, the game.
This is it. I guess it's, what does horror mean to you? Now, without sort of already going into the 2 games, but I found 7 and 8 to be complete opposites for me in terms of how I felt about the horror. But it feels like these days horror seems to boil down into 2 main camps. One is, as you kind of said it, that sense of impending dread and fear. And the other seems to be, I'm just going to throw this grotesque monster at you and there's going to be lots of blood and gore on the screen. To me, the latter isn't horror. Yeah, it's a horror game, but it doesn't feel horror to me. Whereas the other side of the game, the dread, the fear, that to me is a successful horror game.
Because I think after Resident Evil 6 came out, those were exactly the questions they were asking themselves, of what is the identity of Resident Evil? Why have we moved so far away? And don't get me wrong, we had a lot of spin-offs like the Umbrella Chronicles, Revelations 1 and 2 as well, which roughly came out at the same time. And they were more, don't get me wrong, they had their scary elements, but they were a lot more action-focused. Ironically enough, the director of Resident Evil Revelations, and apologies if I butcher this name, Koshi Nakanishi, they wanted to move back to the survival horror roots. And what I didn't realise was that, and obviously it makes sense in hindsight, it was a 3-year cycle, but production for the 7th game didn't start until 2014, so a good 2 years after Resident Evil 6 came out, had time to marinate in the fan base, and let's face it, everybody was making fun of it, from the weird giraffe 6.
Yeah, we won't go about that cover. We won't talk about the cover.
Yeah. So they decided to try a lot of new things for this in terms of the development, and one of the things which I thought was interesting was, apparently there's a build of this, they call it a grey box build, I think. Essentially what that means is they use default assets to kind of see how the game's going to play out. So it was very rudimentary. Okay. Don't get me wrong, there's probably a lot more complicated technical things going on in the background, but they basically use stand-in models and things, and they see how it's going to go. One of the scrapped concepts was that you were going to be a private investigator who was trying to look for a young woman who, of course, would ironically enough be your wife in the finished product. So the beginning of the game, instead of driving to the Louisiana Bayou, you would take a taxi, you would be looking at things from your bag. It was completely different. But the other thing as well is they pioneered the Resident Evil engine, and I think the idea was that Capcom and all the people involved wanted to create an engine that wasn't really made with other people in mind, if that makes sense. They weren't trying to make the next Unity engine or anything like that. They just wanted to make one for Resident Evil, so that was so fascinating. And have you heard about the demo that they showcased in 2015?
I'm not sure I do, no.
The one called The Kitchen?
No, I saw that when I was researching, but I didn't actually look it up. up, so no, tell us.
It was more focused on VR, and I think it's more focused on, you know, the two guys who go into the house at the very beginning of the game.
Yeah.
The ones who are doing the urbexing in a suit, and you're like, why would you urbex in a suit? Weird. But anyway, so you're basically tied up in this kitchen with your friend, and there's this creature coming towards you. It's basically, the best way I can describe it is Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares meets 50 Shades of Jesus Christ. It's not a great experience, and I don't mean that as in it's a bad one.
Yeah.
It's more if you were trapped there, because there's not really much you can do in it. It's basically your friend tries to free you, and then Mia comes up behind and drags him into the darkness, kills him, and then kills you at the end, and it's not really...
It's probably just to demo the VR element, isn't it? And by the way, you are never getting me to play this game in VR.
No,
never.
me too.
Sorry, but it's not going to happen.
One of the things that I think this game drew inspiration from, and trust me, we will get into it, there's a lot of inspiration from certain horror films like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in particular, with, you know, the big chainsaws running after you. PT as well, the game that every horror game wants to be for some reason, the narrow hallways and things. You had Saw, you had body horror, found footage like the Blair Witch Project and Wreck. You had so many influences for this game, but after 2015 eventually they would reveal that, it's Resident Evil 7 that's coming out, and they would shift from the third person perspective to first person, much to the dismay of a lot of people. It seems to still be a sticking point that you can't play this in third person. How did you feel about that? See, when you first played this?
Didn't really bother me, and maybe that's because, you know, as I said, I was never necessarily a huge Resi fan from day one, game one. I think playing it in first person is a better experience for the horror, but if you're a traditionalist, you know, as a fan of the game, I can understand why you'd probably be upset, but I think playing it in third person may have taken something away from it.
No, I agree with that, because you do feel a lot more detached, I suppose, whereas if you're playing a game like Outlast, PT, unfortunately, I don't think Silent Hill, that's all third person, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Although it can be scary in third person. I mean, like when we played Dead Space, of course, that has its terrifying moments, but if it's in first person, it's literally forcing you as the player to step in the shoes of the character, so it's a lot more in your face and visceral.
Yeah, and I think, look, we've mentioned it, did the VR side of things, so obviously I think that obviously has to lend itself to the first person, but, you know, we said it came off the back of 5 and 6, which weren't particularly, not necessarily well received but by players, but they weren't hugely great games, and it felt like they reinvented themselves with this. I mean, look, 7 is probably just a new take on 1, right, in the mansion, etc., but it felt like they tried to shake things up, at least with 7, and one of those probably is going to be the viewpoint, right? And gamers and websites, you know, media are always quick to criticize companies when they don't try something new, but when they do, they get shouted down as well, you know.
I mean, that is true, because ironically enough, a lot of the Resident Evil fan base like their cozy familiarity, which is weird considering each game is so drastically different but still kind of links back to the previous one in some way or another, whereas this one, other than the very ending, is so detached from the rest of the series. It could be its own series, to be honest. Maybe not with 8, which again we'll get onto 8, but I mean for 7 there was so many technological leaps for this game. You know, as I said, they had the RE engine they were developing, they developed VR support, which I'm totally with you. Again, I want to reiterate, Your Honour, I'm not playing this in VR. It is terrifying alone. They used a system called photogrammetry, which is when they scan real life objects and things and put it into the game, because the game, as horrifying as it is, looks absolutely gorgeous at times.
It's a great game, a great looking game. That's what I'm saying. They really shook it up from the previous iterations. And yeah, I mean, even playing it now, I mean, what? I didn't realise it's 8 years old now, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it still looks great. It's a great looking game. And again, credit to them for taking the time, well, I mean, in the end, 5 years or so, but taking the time to revamp it and to try to do some things different. Like even the enemies aren't really traditional enemies in the game as such, really, are they?
Yeah, because you've still got your stalking enemies, which would return in Resident Evil 2 remake, and I want to say that was 2019. Yeah, because I think that was 2019 and then 2020 was was when the third remake came out, but they definitely ramped it up in terms of, wouldn't it be cool if you had an enemy that stalked you throughout the entire game? And it's like, no, I don't like that.
Just to clarify what I meant, is initially the first set of enemies you come across the family, the whole thing felt a bit more, I'm going to use the word realistic. Do you know what I mean? Compared to the previous iterations. And I think one is the upscaling in the graphics helps. The fact where it was set in what looked like a house in the middle of the bayou rather than a mansion. And with the enemies being, or this Baker family, this villainous family who've just got you chained up, it just felt that level of fear, I think, from the fact that it felt quite realistic. And again, I'm going to link it back to, that's why I think the first person works so well, because it felt different when you started, at least when you started the game.
No, it definitely feels a lot more intimate compared to, especially with Resident Evil 8, where it almost turns into a whole, they're going to take over the world if they don't get stopped and things, and you think, this is the problem that we had with 5 and 6, for the Umbrella was evil for the first one and so on. At least, it was contained in the mansion, and the second it was the city, it kept having to get bigger and bigger until eventually in 6, although we joked about it in the skit that it was all globe-trotting and things, and it got too out of hand essentially, whereas in this they toned it back down to a very intimate and close story, very relatable goals, that it was just about a guy who was trying to find his wife in the middle of a Louisiana bayou. And then the 8th one definitely stepped it up. I have to say, and this is my last point of course before we actually jump in and deep dive into these games, but for the follow-up game to this, which is of course Resident Evil 8 Village, I have to say I didn't really see too much in terms of development or any major dramas, and I could totally be wrong in this, feel free to correct me, but for this they put in everything and they made it more of a survival horror game, whereas the 8th one, when they developed it, it seemed to be like the love child of the 4th game meeting the 7th game.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know, I feel as if the campiness of 4 just doesn't marry up well with 7, and it is something we'll of course get into, but they basically wanted to expand on the ideas that they had in 7. They wanted to make it more grand, and there is a particular character we will be getting onto later that they used for all the marketing, a particular woman vampire. As it were. Oh my god, they used her, and then it was like, right, okay, she's only in it for a quarter of the game. If you're lucky, that's it, she's gone.
I did chuckle at that when I played the game. I did chuckle at that.
I was so shocked at that because, as I said, I haven't really played this game. I knew some spoilers.
Clever marketing. All about marketing.
See, for the 7th game, and this is what makes me laugh, the 7th game is very much it's a horror, what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Whereas in 8th, it's like, because some of you complained about the last one, here's a 8-foot vampire lady in a big white dress that chases you about. Enjoy, everybody.
They knew what they were doing, one with that character and two with the advertising, let's just say that.
Even my girlfriend, right, I was telling her that I was doing this episode, and she turned round to me, and I kid you not, we were walking the dog, and she said, oh yeah, I know somebody similar, because I was trying to describe Lady Dimitrescu, and she went, oh, we've got something similar, it's called the 8-foot lady. And I went, what do you mean the 8-foot lady? And she typed it into her phone and showed me, and I was like, that's Lady Dimitrescu. And she went, oh, that's the 8-foot lady. I went, which I know is based on, I think, Japanese folklore, her particular character, but we'll come on to that, but it's weird how starkly different these games are.
Yes, yeah.
We went from Deliverance to Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, that's all I'm saying, right? But see, without any further ado, will we dive into, let's face it, it's the Ethan Winters duology, isn't it?
Yeah, and all I want to say, I want to headline this with saying the poor guy, he needs to look after, especially his hands, he needs to look after himself a lot better. The creators had it out for him, didn't they?
Do you know what's weird? And it's something that I hadn't noticed until I was watching another reviewer talk about this, but genuinely, for some reason, the developers hated left hands in this game. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And they showed a montage, and it was like Ethan getting stabbed, and the left hand, he gets his left hand chopped off. Lucas gets his left hand chopped off. And it's like, hold on a second, they're onto something here. What is it with the left hand?
He doesn't escape it in the 8th game either. He gets his right hand as well in that one. I think he gets strung up by his left hand. And it's like, geez, what has he done?
Oh, he goes through absolute hell. Yeah. And that is something that we will come But see, without any further ado, will we dive into this castle, try to avoid the 8-foot vampire ladies, try to avoid the Louisianians, whatever they're called, and yeah, dive into the great, the bad, and the downright mouldy about this game. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome to Satsunami, a Scottish variety podcast that discusses topics from gaming and films to anime and general interests. Join me, your host, Satsunami, as well as the rest of our Satsunami team for our takes on these very important pop culture topics.
Sir, it's clearly a trap. I accept your bait!
That happens 3 times in the film. Like, every time that general goes, don't do this one thing, he goes, do you know what I'm gonna do? That's the exact
It does as well. She had the pointy teeth. What was that about?
She looked like Bilbo when he wants the ring back.
She did, didn't she? I just want the lightsaber one more time.
Parasite says, no, you will get back into your office and work.
No, says the man in Zoom. Trousers are for the working man.
You're bursting into your hotel room. Honey, we need to go.
Leave the kids. You can milk an audition. Oh!
That's the worst thing you've ever said in any of the episodes.
If that sounds like your cup of tea, then you can check us out at our website, chatsunami.com, as well as all good podcast apps. As always, stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, stay hydrated.
Stay classy and have a banana. This has been Satsunami.
I'm sorry.
Welcome to the trailer for Gaming Views. Think of it as the demo level before the real action kicks off.
We're Dan, and every week we're bringing hot takes, breaking news, deep dives, and everything gaming related.
From the biggest headlines to retro classics, hardware breakdowns, and inside scoops on developers, we cover it all.
So level up your gaming knowledge, subscribe to Gaming Views wherever you get your podcasts, and don't miss out.
I'm going to start off by saying I loved 7. I played it late. I didn't play it when it was released, so I probably only played it a couple of years ago, or maybe 3 years ago first time. But I loved the look of it, as in both the graphics and the setting. I said earlier that it felt real, and it kind of lost, or for me, it shook off the, like you said, a bit of the cartoony or the campy vibe of some of the earlier ones. I loved the videotape mechanic, you know, where they put in a tape and then you played a little section, you know, that you were seeing on there. I thought the Baker family were great as villains. There's a couple of things I didn't like about it, but ultimately, yeah, I thought it was just a great game, and it felt like a real return to form for me anyway.
You know what? I am totally with you there. So for anyone who doesn't know what this game's about and are wondering why are we praising a bunch of maniacs inside this Louisiana hell house, so the story basically is that you play as, in both games, Ethan Winters, who is just a mild-mannered, I want to say IT consultant or IT software developer, something like that. He is just an everyday man, and his wife says, oh yeah, I'm just going on a job, I'll be back. And then 3 years later, after she disappears, she sends you a note to say, I'm in Louisiana, come pick me up. To which obviously, and I think your friends as well, would say that if your wife went missing for 3 years and then sent you a letter saying, come pick me up in Louisiana, you'd be like, why Louisiana? Why, what? To which, of course, he very much hops, skips and jumps into his car. And this is something that I was saying to you, that the horror was basically ruined for me at the very beginning of this game, because I played this game on the Steam Deck and I didn't realise that the Steam Deck for some games, I mean, some listeners out there might know what I'm on about here, but there's some compatibility issues, so you have to run it in certain compatibility modes to make it work properly. Otherwise, the cutscenes and things won't work. And at the very beginning, the cutscenes weren't working, but I thought, okay, it's fine. But at the very beginning, you get put into the perspective of Ethan Winters as you're driving down the road, and all of a sudden, this isn't an exaggeration, by the way, this isn't me being funny, these strips of colour came down, basically representing the pansexual flag. I could not see anything the window. I was looking going, why are all these colours here? Did I make a wrong turn? It turns out, which I actually think is really, really clever, I didn't realise this until I fixed the compatibility issues, is that when you're driving, you're not actually driving with a fully formed 3D area around you. It's just like a kind of bubble around you that moves, and it's not until you get out the car that all the models are there. I thought that was really clever the way they did that. Obviously, the only reason I found that out was because of, the colours just slapping me in the face, and if you look on social media, I will be posting that picture. It was like, what is going on? It was horrifying. But yeah, you basically go to the house, you try to find your wife, and as you were saying before, you meet the Baker family who have just been driven insane by something that you don't quite know yet, and trust me, we will get into that. And basically, much like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, PT, any slasher film, any monster film, you have to go in, survive, and rescue your wife. And you get beaten to hell and back, to be quite honest, don't you? It is just quite
brutal.
Oh, it's horrific, isn't it? Yeah. But again, it's very, compared to at least 6 anyway, it's very, and I keep using this word intimate, but I really mean it, because when you get kidnapped by the Baker family, you get dragged into, of all places, you would think that he would throw you into the basement, he would chain you up or something, but no, he straps you to a chair in the dining room and forcibly makes you part of their family. It's an absolutely terrifying scene, because you've got Jack and Marguerite Baker who are trying to feed him, and you know what Marguerite's like when she tries to feed you mouldy food and he spits it out. He's not eating it, Jack, he's not eating it. And you know, they're going mad. And the only quote unquote normal, and I'm using that very loosely, is their son Lucas, who, and I pointed this out to you, I can't remember if you remember what I said here, but he reminds me of the guy from Baby Reindeer.
Yeah, I can see that.
I genuinely cannot unsee it. He pops up on the screen all the time, like, hey, have you seen my stand-up show? Oh, by the way, this is an homage to Saw. And you're like, what the hell is going on in this game? Yeah, he is absolutely terrifying. But that's the thing, though, the dynamic is so tight-knit, and you have to take out each family member individually. You know, like a Resident Evil game, you have to do these mini-boss fights and everything.
Isn't Granny there, though? Isn't Granny at the dinner table as well?
She is.
Special mention for Granny there.
Yeah. Huge shout out to our granny Pandalorians out there. But no, you're completely right. Yeah, she sits catatonic really throughout the entire game.
It appears in different places, and that also caught me off guard a lot, let's just say that.
That led to a change of several trousers on my part. Coming into the room being like, okay, I'm safe, not checking my corners. Seeing Granny rocking back and forth, I was like, oh, okay.
It's like Rezi's version of Alma, wasn't it?
Oh, don't get me started on Alma. It will take us back to our collector's edition episode. Check out casting views for that episode, but
yeah, please do.
Horrifying, but well worth a listen. Please don't let my research be in vain for that one. It's very much you're going through all of these areas in the house, and what I love about it as well, other than the fact that they kept banging on about, oh, it's like PT, I don't think they themselves said that. It's very apparent going up and down these hallways, and there's all these horrors, that it's quite PT-esque, you know, and I hate saying that. It's to say, oh, it's not its own thing, it's something else, because it does deserve the recognition. One thing that I thought was quite interesting, I don't know if you saw this, was that there is a scene, and I don't know if they just censored it for the promotional material or for the game itself, but there's a particular scene where you think you have been saved, where a policeman comes in and he does that stupid horror trope of, hey, maybe you're the crazy one, and it's like, I am literally bleeding, my hand is hanging off, for the love of God, get me the hell out of here. And then Jack comes in and basically separates his brain from his body with a shovel, and apparently that was censored more in the Japanese version, which is really weird. Yeah, it's really weird, because it was the opposite when it came to America, and there was a lot of things that they censored for Resident Evil 1 in particular, so just weird why they did that, but it is very gory.
Yeah, that's a good point you say as well, because to go in with what you're saying, you said a couple of times, use the word intimate. I get what you're saying about that, because like I said, it's not set in a massive mansion where you're going across a massive hallway with a wide open space. It's claustrophobic, I think, especially especially the disgusting kitchen when you do get to wander around. You know you're in a small house, yet you also, because it's a horror game, you're not getting out of it, at least not easily. So what does this small house hold for me? But like you said, it is also really brutal. And the graphics, I think, really up the ante on their impact quite considerably. I mean, like you said, in the first 5 minutes, the wife that you go rescue stabbed your hands with a screwdriver to a wall, has chopped your hand off. And like you said, that scene with the poor policeman, it really does. It's shocking because the gore, and whereas I often say gore isn't scary on its own, mix it with the quite thick, scary atmosphere that this game builds, you're getting almost the best of both worlds in that sense.
Oh, absolutely. It's something that myself and my friend Adam have talked about before, about how effective, in particular for horror games, that gore can be in terms of eliciting fear. And one of the examples we used was Outlast versus Outlast 2, and it spawned one of my favourite quotes from him of all time, where he said, after the fifth time of getting a crucifix to the groin and getting absolutely crushed, what more can this game do to me? It completely desensitizes you to the horrors of it. And I have to say, whenever I die over and over in a game, you're like, oh, right, okay, here we go. Here's that particular animation. Oh, it's repeating itself. Obviously, you don't want that to happen to you, but it's quite interesting the way they do it in this, because obviously the gore is there and it's very visceral, it's very in your face, but for the most part, I would say it has a purpose, except maybe towards the end when it goes to the more, again, what a lot of Resident Evil games do, and it's like, oh, we're in the laboratory, only this time, although there is a laboratory, this time it's more they're on a ship, and you're like, oh, great, I can't wait. That's probably the weakest part of the game.
Yeah, definitely.
Spoilers, of course, in case you hadn't noticed, but eventually you escape the house with your wife, if you choose your wife, but that's a whole other thing. Actually, that reminds me, there is a character who helps you throughout the game called Zoe, and she is one of the few Baker children that hasn't been infected, and by children I mean she's a grown woman, but she helps you escape, and at nearly the end you have to decide whether you're going to inject her with the serum to stop the mold from taking over her, or you inject your wife, and obviously you're going to go for your wife. But trust me, I was sorely tempted, because I thought, yeah, Mia's not been very helpful so far. She's kind of lied, she's gaslit. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of you, Mia. The report card is not looking good.
But do you not think, I mean, you brought it up now. I've actually put that in one of my criticisms of the game, because I think that decision is I thought it was silly giving that because I get it, right? So this character has helped you, right, in the game, but the whole point of it is that your wife's gone missing for 3 years. She's been subjected to whatever she's had to go through in that house. And then you get a choice of who to save in the end. Do you know what I mean? Ethan's whole ethos is he's got to get his wife, is whatever she's done to him in the previous sort of 8 hours. It didn't do enough to give a real reason as to why you shouldn't choose your wife, if you know what I mean.
Do you know what it reminds me of? And I know we're fresh off the heels of Bioshock month a couple of months ago, but it does remind me of, see, the little sister choice, where it's like, I mean, even that is less impactful, because the only thing it really affects is the ending you get. And even then, it's like, the canon ending is you save Mia.
Exactly.
And in the DLC, you save her as her uncle who punches everything in sight. We'll touch on that briefly later, but yeah, that's the canon ending. So you're like, not great. It doesn't feel as if it's very impactful.
No, I was quite disappointed in that as well, because up to that, and as you said, the last third, in the ship, I think that was probably the weaker part of it. But yeah, it kind of disappointed me because it had been such an interesting game up to that point. You'd only choose Zoe to either see what the other option is or just out of spite, right? That's really the only reason.
And even then, unless you're doing it for the achievement, you could just YouTube it and go,
yeah.
I can't remember if you die or Mia. I think Mia dies at the end if you choose Zoe. Yeah, it's just a weird narrative thing that didn't need to be there. And I personally, I don't know how you feel about this, but I personally feel as if, see, when it gets to the Saw-esque type part of the game where you have to fight against Lucas and his creatures and whatnot, which of course we haven't really touched on, but they're called the Molded, which are just hulking humanoids with melted faces and big teeth. I wouldn't say they're the most creative looking, because you've got the regular one, you've got the fast one that crawls on all fours like a licker, you've got the big fat ones that explode like boomers from Left 4 Dead 2, that kind of thing. You've got bugs as well, which irritated the hell out of me, I have to say.
Oh yeah, I've got that on my list here. Hated the insects. I've got
Yep. I mean, I hated Marguerite even more. She was terrifying. She was disgusting. And I don't mean, I'm sure she's a lovely lady before the mold, but that having an egg sac and everything in that particular part, that was horrifying. That was the whole, oh, let's add the fly into this mix. It's like, please don't have Jeff Goldblum voice Marguerite. I don't want to see that. Actually, speaking of voice actors, can we just give a huge shout out to the voice actors? Because my God, they are absolutely fantastic. We've got Todd Soley, who does Ethan Winters, and I will get onto it later, but him in the 8th game especially, oh, he's just fantastic. We've got Katie O'Hagan, who does Mia, Jack Brand, who does Jack Baker, Sarah Coates, who does Marguerite Baker, Jesse Pimento, who does the baby reindeer guy, Lucas Baker, Giselle Gilbert, who does Zoe Baker. I could go on and on, really, but they are absolutely fantastic.
I agree. I do think, so whilst he was a good actor though, I do think Ethan's reaction to some of the events that happened to him feel a bit funny in how underwhelmed he is to having his hand chopped off and things at times, if you know what I mean. But generally, in terms of the performances though, I don't think that's a him issue. I think that's the kind of almost like the scripting and how over the top the games are. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the Bakers were done really well. What I would say, going back to your point about the enemy, like them not being overly varied, I think that's what you're saying, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I did have that on my list, but then thinking about it, what I've said is that how great I think the game is because they've done something different and it's contained in that one house. So I guess you're not necessarily going to have a massive array of enemies, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not in the Umbrella laboratories or anything like that. It's in a house. So I think whilst I've put it on the negative side of my list, I guess I've got to cut it a bit of slack on that basis.
Yeah, no, I do see your point there, because I hated the bugs, I'm going to be honest. No quarter for the bugs. Absolutely not. The only good bug's a dead bug, in the words of Johnny Rico, but anyway, that's another thing. Starship Troopers aside, of course. The Molded, I totally see that. Although they weren't as varied, it does kind of add to that idea that these Molded are most likely real people. These are people that have come to the house, perish, because there's articles everywhere you find throughout the house in Resident Evil fashion that you see, oh, they've been kidnapped, they've disappeared, oh, where have they gone? And that's what happens at the very beginning when you find the tape, and that's something I love as well, just touching on what you said earlier, that you get to play as these characters on the tapes and you get to do that found footage thing. It is just so well done, because you play as Mia, you play as the Urbex group, I think their name's Sewer Gators or something for their channel, because you see their van at the very beginning and you go, ooh, what's that? Really cool idea, but God, imagine if they survived. How insufferable would they be in the podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, did you see that mouldy kitchen? Womp womp.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The thing about that opening bit, and like I said, I love the videotape mechanic bit because it does crop up in the Saw element as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think. But that opening bit with those people going in, so you've already got quite an atmospheric game, and then you're seeing an element, at least the first part of that, through a VHS cassette tape and the effect of that. It just feels like they've really then layered on that tension through that little section, and that was probably one of my favourite bits.
There is just something quite nostalgic about that type of horror. I don't know if analog horror's the right term for it, but you know, with the VHSs and everything and that kind of idea, it feels very, and this is a word I used in the very first episode about RE1, but it feels quite voyeuristic, doesn't it? That when you're watching this and you're in their shoes, you know that Ethan's of course watching this to see what happened, and you're being constantly watched, of course, by Lucas and the Baker family as a whole. Even Zoe, who is trying to help you, she's still watching you, so there's that tension that's always lingering there, and I think the part in the house is absolutely incredible. And this is where we get into probably the most controversial side of it, because yeah, as soon as you escape the house you end up in a big ship, and it turns out that your wife all this time was working for a particular shady shady group, which is called Not Umbrella, and her and her male colleague are transporting a little girl, which you see flashes of her sometimes, but you're like, what the heck was that? Is that just the game trying to be spooky? And then you find out that she was created as a bioweapon that was supposed to be transported in a very nice ferry across, no questions asked. Anyway, long story short, she throws a wobbly and kills everybody in the ship and turns them to molded. It's actually quite tragic, I have to say, and it's something that's expanded upon in the Daughters DLC where you play as Zoe in the house. Basically, for that one, for anyone who doesn't know, it's set just as the boat crashes into the bayou. So Jack goes out, he rescues Mia and Evelyn, who is the wee moulded girl, as it were. You go up to tuck her in and make sure she's okay, and she does the creepy child thing of, your family's mine now, and then all of a sudden she disappears. Your family go from such nice people to just absolutely psychotic with bugs coming out of everywhere and spewing this black liquid everywhere. It is horrifying to see these people who only wanted to do something good suddenly start hunting you down. And that one in particular, see if you want terrifying, play that one. That is horrifying, that one. But that's the reason why Mia was there in the first place, because she crashes with Evelyn. She's of course knocked unconscious, so she's unable to warn them. She's a wee girl with all these powers, but she wants a family to depend on.
That's what I think the end of the game does really well in turning around. So I know you said it expands in the DLC, but there is a scene towards the end of 7, isn't there, where Jack is talking to you, isn't it? Or, I can't remember now. Is it like a dream or is it?
Kind of. It's like a dream and it's part of the molds.
That's right, yeah.
Because you find out in 8 that the mold acts as a hive mind for everyone who's been infected. While you're stuck in the mold on the ship, Mia's fighting her way Call of Duty style through it, killing all the molded. And you're right, you get that scene. It's a beautiful scene where Jack's talking to you. You kind of jump out your seat and then he's like, no, I'm all right. I'm all right, trust me. And you can see it in his eyes. And that is something I found absolutely outstanding, that you can tell the subtle differences in his facial expressions. They're not harsh, they're not furrowed and everything. He is very gentle with you. He begs you to save his family and everything. Zoe kind of sits there like a spare lemon, mind you, but I don't know where Marguerite is either, but it's a strange one. But yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and again, that's what I've got to put. Love the twist at the end with the Jack reveal. It's just surprisingly, do I want to say moving? I'm not sure if it is moving, but I guess it really turns the game on its head, that moment.
Yeah, it gives them a lot more depth as well, because if you look at the past Resident Evil games, it's essentially, let me inject myself with the virus alphabet, okay? And then, I turn into a big monster with a big eye. And don't get me wrong, that does happen in this game, and I rolled my eyes when I saw Jack turn into one of them, and you're like, oh, great. Shoot the eyeball. Oh, ha ha ha. Because you get one of those at the end of the Not a Hero DLC, where that's more Call of Duty-esque, where you play as Chris Redfield, you go down to hunt down Lucas. He is working for someone called, again, not Umbrella. I think they're called the Connections or something. Why they don't just use Umbrella? Because Chris arrives later at the very end of the game. Spoilers. But he arrives in a helicopter belonging to a group called Blue Umbrella, who are a paramilitary group, and they want to right the wrongs of what Umbrella did. And I just sat there scratching my head going, yeah, guys, that symbol's tainted. You should really choose something else. Don't choose Tricell. That's even worse. Try something else, guys. Come on, it is tainted. Definitely turns very action-oriented once you get in the ship and everything. And the pro and con of the very end, I wish, personally, the game ended when you injected Evelyn with the antidote or whatever it is, because you find out, speaking of Granny, as you said, the twist is, she was the Granny all along, spying on you and things. Very much if Coco was a horror film. But yeah, it turns out, she was spying on you, but then she turns into a big gribbly monster that you have to shoot the eye and face out of, and you're like, okay. And then it turns into stereotypical Resident Evil, and I'm not a big fan of that personally, but I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I agree with you. I've got my notes here that I didn't like the end. Not that I didn't like the end. The first half of the game in the house, the Bakers, it built up such a great tension. It felt different. It felt claustrophobic. It did feel like you were trying to survive. And yeah, the bit at the end of the game just fell flat to me. It didn't have the same, what's the word? Not excitement, but it didn't have the same desire to kind of get through it like I did for the first half of the game, or 2/3.
Yeah, the end is a bit of a slog because it looks different and you're like, oh, that's great, I've got a different environment. And then you're like, oh another ship. Oh, another part of the ship. I don't want to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, the fuse is broken. Oh, I have to walk up the stairs. It was just such a slog. And obviously, by the time you get back to the house, I couldn't believe I was saying that. I was like, oh, thank God, I'm back in the house. Yeah. Whereas before, I was like, Jesus, how long have I got to go in this? It is a slog, but that is probably the worst part of the game, I would say.
Yeah.
The only other part is the identity of it as a Resident Evil game.
I just wanted to say my notes here because I tried to keep brief, so it's just made me laugh as I'm looking at it because I've got killing Jack first time, car, fire, gun, second time killing Jack, chainsaw, and then I've just got Marguerite, and then I've got just as horrific and annoying to kill, then granny attack, exclamation mark, and my final note, what is it with Ethan's hand?
Yeah.
That was my high-level summary of the notes. But no, just to say that, yeah, I really enjoyed this game. Having said there was a number of criticisms, every game's going to have that, right? But yeah, I really enjoyed 7.
Because as I said, there was a lot of DLC that eventually came out for this. Some of it added to the horror and others was just baffling. There was a banned footage DLC which had a lot of different stories to it. Like you played as Clancy for one of them where you were trapped in a room and it was like an escape room where Marguerite would check on you every so often, but you had to do different puzzles, and if you made too much noise or whatever, or she noticed that things were out of place, she would punish you and you would die, so you'd have to go back to a checkpoint. It was quite tense, and I have to say I wasn't as brave to do that one. There was a daughter's one where you, Zoe, get to see what happened before Evelyn basically corrupted the entire house, and it's so damn tragic. It sounds psychotic to say I love it, but it was such a good addition. End of Zoe, I've got mixed opinions on it because you basically play as the uncle of the Baker family and you punch your way through the entire thing and you throw spears. It just feels tonally very weird, but at the same time, if you're punching a molded in the face, I don't know, I don't want them to beat me up. That's the thing. It is so damn cool. It's like the rule of cool where you eventually get a power glove at the end and you just beat the ever-loving you-know-what out of Jack Baker, who turns out is still alive, would you believe, but as a creepy moulded type figure. Then of course Chris swoops in at the end and he hands over a walkie-talkie to Zoe and is like, oh, there's someone on the phone and it's Ethan, and Ethan's like, yeah, I knew I'd send someone back for you, and she's like, Ethan, what the hell? But she gets rescued, of course, which is a very nice ending. You've got the Lucas storyline wrapped up where in Not a Hero, where you have to rescue some of the Blue Umbrella soldiers as Chris. You have to go down. The only downside of that is there's a new type of molded. I think it's the white molded or something like that, and it can only be taken out with a special bullet, which is a pain in the backside, but it does feel more Call of Duty-esque. But it's good that they kept it to that DLC, if that makes sense.
I was going to say, if it's in DLC, you can almost see it as non-canon almost, so I don't mind that sort of thing in DLC.
Because you've got story DLC like that, and then you've got DLC where it's like, oh, you have to feed Jack in a set amount of time, which is quite funny, I have to say. It's like Jack's birthday or something. He's wearing a hat. You have to run out, fight the molded with party hats on and shoot them, but then you have to combine all this food and bring it back. You've got one that's essentially Blackjack, where you play as Clancy again. It's very interesting, this game. You've got the Ethan Must Die one, which is just basically Madhouse mode, but for psychos, and if anybody knows how bad Madhouse mode is on this, trust me, it gets worse. So yeah, overall, it's a terrifying experience. It's something that I feel as if the franchise needed at the time, as controversial as that sounds, to bring it back to its horror roots. But then 3 years later, after they brought out the remake of 2 and they brought out the third remake, they started development of Resident Evil Village in 2018, and as we were half joking, half talking about earlier, the promotion for this one was really, really weird, because you had Lady Dimitrescu, who was a very tall lady, let's just say, as a vampire. You had this village in the middle of Eastern Europe. I can't remember remember if they confirm it's Romania or not.
I don't think they ever fully
commit, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had the villagers going about their daily business, which drew parallels, of course, to Resident Evil 4, which were 2 years off, of course, from the Resident Evil 4 remake coming out. But yeah, it was a weird experience for me personally. See, before we get into the game itself, how did you feel about all the advertising for this game? Because I know you probably didn't play it when it came out, but yeah, what were your thoughts about it?
I'm kind of like you. So they heavily focused on Lady Dimitrescu. So clever misdirect, I guess. But I had assumed that she was going to be the big overarching villain, was going to be there tormenting you through the game, was potentially going to be the Mr. X of this game. So yeah, I just simply looked at it and just thought, yeah, it's obvious she's clearly the main villain. And that was it. More for me for falling for it.
I mean, I can't blame you though. She's in everything. Do you know what's really embedded in my mind? It's, you know, that scene where you get captured and chained up in the castle, yeah. And it's that scene where I can't remember if she looks at you with this very kind of, I don't want to say seductive smile, but you know what I mean? Very much.
I think you could say that. Look, they definitely played on her body and her look, you know. So that's what I was saying at the start. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, because I'm just looking up some of the pictures here for the promotion, and yeah, it's essentially a low angle looking up at Lady Dimitrescu.
Yes, yeah, and it worked because you got a lot of cosplayers cosplaying the character. So yeah, it was great marketing from that perspective.
Oh, 100%. I have to say, some of my friends have dressed up as Lady Dimitrescu, and it's like, you look at how much effort they put into these cosplays, some of them are so impressive. And the good thing is, as well, they don't need stilts.
And I guess, look, she was a very different style of villain, I guess, to what we'd seen before. If we're looking at it and saying we both thought that she was going to be the main villain, she wasn't Jack Baker.
Yeah.
You know? She's not Nemesis, not Mr. X. Do you know what I mean? It was a very strikingly different model of character, I guess.
Also, huge shout out to the voice actress who, quite honestly, I think she does a lot of promotion for the series now, because I've seen a few videos of her, and I think it was her and Mia's voice actress. So the voice actress for Lady Dimitrescu is Maggie Robertson. Absolutely knocks it out of the park. Katie O'Hagan, who does Mia, they did a video where they were reacting to things from Resident Evil Village. It was really funny. But I think Claire Redfield's, I can't remember her name now, but Claire Redfield's voice actress, she does cosplay as Claire and does the reaction videos and plays through it, which is, again, it's so good to see the voice actors being a part of, I don't want to sound parasocial and say the community, but you know, the community in terms of the promotional side of it, actually enjoying the franchise.
But what's interesting is, so yeah, the voice actress was also the motion capture for Lady Dimitrescu, but the body and the looks were based on a model. And just what I was saying, I was just looking her up, and yeah, it kind of is her double. Obviously, I know that sounds a silly thing to say, but it's funny, isn't it, how you get a model for the visual look of it, but then you've got somebody else who does the voice and the motion capture. Is quite odd why they didn't get the model to do the motion capture almost, if you know what I mean. It's funny.
I would wholeheartedly recommend for anyone who hasn't seen it to watch the video of the motion capture stuff that they do. It is so impressive what they put into it, because I know people make fun of it saying, oh look, they're in a skin tight suit and they've got those dots all over them, and obviously it does look silly. We've had the same things for, off the top of my head, because I watched it the other day with The Hobbit and Benedict Cumberbatch as Smaug, and obviously he wasn't going to wear a dragon outfit, but he wore the motion capture for that, and he's making all the weird faces going, oh, I'm fire, blah blah blah. And for this, although yeah, it might look silly in the outset, it is just amazing how much effort and attention to detail that they've put into this game. This is one thing, I've got a lot of criticisms about this game, but before we dive in, I genuinely think that this game looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, and it's funny, today I was just refreshing a memory and was having a look at a video, and I sat back there and thought, it's a great looking game. Again, you know, I thought 7 was good, but 8, yeah, really does look nice.
Because I mean, each Resident Evil game ever since 7, it just looks better and better. Because when you look at the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake, for all the good and bad they did, they look fantastic. Resident Evil 4 make, oh my god, that looks gorgeous as well. But for this one, they honestly hit the ball at the park with this one. They nailed the aesthetic of it, and apparently partly the reason that they've got so much snow in that is because I think they went to visit somewhere, an Eastern European village, and then they got hit by a cold snap, so it was like minus something degrees while they were there, and they were like, yeah, our village doesn't reflect that. Let's put snow in. But that is probably where I'm going to draw the line here. As I said, I do have some minor and major gripes with this game, but before I dive into that, the plot takes place, I want to say, a couple of years after the events of Resident Evil 7, and of course Ethan and Mia have a bit of a strenuous marriage, but they have a daughter now called Rose, which is honestly such a nice family dynamic, all the way up until Mia gets Robocopped, let's just say. And of course, none other than the one and only Chris Redfield pops through the door. As I said, in 7, he appears at the end. He looks very weird, but that's another thing. But in 8, I'm going to be honest here, and I'm going to put my cards on the table before we go any further. I hate his haircut in this game. I don't know. This is the most minor nitpick ever. I do not know.
I was going to say, now we're getting to the controversial takes here now.
I do not know what went wrong when he went to the barber and they said, just cut it all off. I don't care if you go all Jack Baker on it. Just chop it off with the chainsaw, come on. It's like he got the tiniest bowl in the world, put it on his head and said, yeah, that'll do for the fringe. Like, there's something that just innately irks me about it. But anyway, maybe if he had the same hair from the other games, I wouldn't have minded as much. But anyway, that very minor nitpick. It says a lot that I'm nitpicking that and not the fact he's just burst through the door and shot me a Winterstead beer. But that's how the game starts. It's very, again, I use this word visceral, but
shocking. It's shocking. I really love the opening because you've also got the fairy tale, the storybook.
Oh, I was blown away by how good that looks. I know that's probably going to be the catchphrase of the episode, but that was very Tim Burton-esque, wasn't it?
Absolutely, spot on. So Mia is reading a story which at the time you don't know, but cleverly foretells what's going to happen, or like the villains in the game, I think, doesn't it? And yeah, you've then got that lovely family scene. And look, right, it's got Resident Evil on the cover, right? So this lovely family thing, is either a facade or it's not going to last long. But having said that, I wasn't expecting Chris to burst in and kill the character that you went through literally hell to save in the previous game. It was a really, really effective opening.
I have to say, you do want to know more, but yeah, unfortunately, the reveal's not as strong as they maybe would have hoped. Because once you get kidnapped by Chris and your baby's taken away, your convoy gets attacked and you wake up upside down and you're like, oh, this isn't normal. And then you crawl out and you have to go through this dark forest that really builds it up, doesn't it? You're trudging through the snow and there's all these atmospheric noises. It's just absolutely masterfully done. And then you get to the village and it's all abandoned. And I think that was one of the criticisms that people had, that a lot of people thought, oh, this is a bit rubbish, because when the trailers came out, this was a village that was full of people. You know, they thought, oh, maybe they'll get to interact with them or see the slow descent into madness. But no, they're all huddled already. It's like the aftermath has already happened by the time you get here. And one of the things that annoyed me a wee bit as well, and again, this is a slight nitpick, but see the voices of these villagers. Are you telling me they're all American? And
absolutely spot on, yes.
Oh, that irks me. Usually I can wave it away and be like, oh yeah, it's just people from all over coming here and it's just a coincidence they're all Americans. But for this in particular, it's not a well-populated area. It's a rural village in the middle of Eastern Europe. I have never heard of like a commune of America. Maybe there is. Maybe there's a commune in Romania. I don't know.
The thing is, they do such an effective job at portraying this East European village that it's jarring. And that's all. You know, if it didn't feel as well drawn, as well crafted, you'd almost be okay with it. All the names are European and even the characters' names. It just felt wrong.
You do get to explore the village later on and a wee bit at the beginning, and then see, to be honest, do you know what killed my hype for this game? And I have to say, going into this, I knew some minor spoilers, some major spoilers, but do you want to know the one thing that killed it for me?
Come on.
Werewolves.
I think you've got my notes in front of you, but yes, yeah. It's interesting, right? Again, whether I'm a hypocrite, I don't know if I'm a hypocrite or not. People listening will have to decide. But, I guess I've said that 7 was good, that it wasn't almost like your traditional enemies as such. I guess the Baker family in 7 and then the Molded still felt creepy. It felt tense. Werewolves, it felt B-movie. Yeah, they've been done and it's literally an American Werewolf in London almost. I strolled into this village and there's werewolves everywhere. Is that what they all like? It just felt disappointing, I think. And I don't know why, because they're great horror movie fare, as in, or fodder, but I don't know, in a Resident Evil game, it just felt wrong.
I think my major gripe about this game is the fact that they don't know what lane they want to be in. Do they want to be a fantasy game? Do they want to be a supernatural game? Do they want to be a horror game? Do they want to be an action horror game? It is all over the place. Some bits that are done excellently, and you think, well, why didn't they go with that? Obviously, you can tell this is the love child of 4 and 7, as I half joked earlier.
Absolutely.
Because you've got the crafting, you've got the organisation, you've got the invisible briefcase, let's just say, and you've got this campiness, but you've got the campiness against the character, as you said before, Ethan Winters, who in the 7th game, he's quite a serious character because all of the films that the 7th game is based on, they are all very, well, relatively serious horror films. You wouldn't put on Saw for a laugh, or if you did, then I would question you and then walk away. No, sorry, I would run away. That's another thing. For these ones, you're right, it is that kind of B-movie feeling. And later on in the game, they try to justify, and I think I texted you at the time when I was playing this, they bend over backwards trying to justify, oh, but they're bioweapons. And it's like, where do you draw the line? Because they try to say Lady Dimitrescu is a bioweapon that, oh, she needs blood, like a vampire, wink, wink. And then she turns into a dragon, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, that was bizarre, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed, I'm not going to lie. I was like, no, bring her back. Damn these modern beauty conventions. You were fine the way you were.
But it's just that classic, now I reveal my final form, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, you're a dragon. And then you get to Moreau, and it's like, oh, you're a fish person. And then you get to House Beneviento, which we will get on to, and oh, she controls dolls. And you get frickin' Magneto at the end. And you're like, oh, that's just Magneto with the name Heisenberg. What's going on here?
But if we're talking about, though, Lady Dimitrescu, that bit, though, sorry, about the enemies in general as well. What I did like also about Lady Dimitrescu is the daughters. They felt well done.
Did you notice the naming convention for them?
I'm going to say I can't remember, so no.
So Lady Dimitrescu's first name is Alcina. Her other daughters are called Bella, Cassandra, and Daniela. So ABCD.
Okay.
That doesn't play into the story or anything. I just wanted to point that out.
It's a fun little fact, though, yeah.
And again, they are absolutely fantastic as well as characters. Although for some reason, one of them keeps reminding me of Amanda Siegfried, and I don't know why. But the one I mean, every time I see her face, I'm like, huh. Or that scene out of Les Mis, I've seen your face before. It's like, I know you. Honestly, see that whole sequence, and I'm going to just admit it now, that whole sequence at the beginning or not beginning, but kind of at the start of the game where you eventually go into Lady Dimitrescu's house and you have to fight off her daughters and everything. And I thought that was genuinely tense because I jumped out my skin. See when you're running and then all of a sudden they appear as bugs and they're like, boo, haha. And you have to expose them to the elements before shattering them. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, maybe this is just me as a player, but I didn't find Lady Dimitrescu as imposing as Mr. X.
No.
I think the only reason for that is maybe because of the promotion, because I've seen her so many times, whereas Mr. X, I've just heard the screams of people who have seen him. But the other thing as well was, I remember there's a particular scene, you might remember it, where you have to get an item and then she climbs up the stairs and there's literally nowhere for you to go. You can't squeeze past. So I did the whole stand and deliver thing and ran at her with the shotgun. And I shot her and she just dusted it off very sassily and she's like, well, that's rude or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. But I managed to get by her. The only time I thought she was scary was, see, when you were down in the dungeon area.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That bit I was terrified at because she's just chasing you in this very claustrophobic area. You're weaving in and out.
It's well done, isn't it? Because I think you're pulling a lever at the time.
Yeah.
And I think it's focusing on your hand, and then you see something, and then the arm just falls away, doesn't it? You know, from the hand.
Yeah, because not only do you have to get your hand back, but you also have to pull the lever, and you've got this 8-foot woman running at you, and you're like, oh, this is not going to end well.
But the thing we didn't say about 7, you've got to love the health tonic in these games that can just stick the hand back on.
It's literally just, you put the hand there, you pour over some water, and it's magic juice. You're like, yeah. I've seen people make fun of it on social media, but it is hilarious the way they do it. They're just like, oh, here's a bottle of water, and they just pour it over. Yeah. But you're completely right, yeah. Again, this is probably the strongest, or rather one of the strongest parts of the game, because you've got that somewhat familiarity with the Spencer Mansion and other mansions similar in the series that you have to solve puzzles to get through. You're constantly being stalked by Lady Dimitrescu. You have to run through and defeat her daughters one by one and get upgrades to certain things. It's so well done, and I was so sad when she turned into a dragon, and I was like, sorry, it's not going to work out. Yeah. You had to mice and men her when you were outside, because it was just a bizarre turn of events, because you fight gargoyles, for God's sake, at one point.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell is going on here? You've got gargoyles, you've got X-Men, you've got vampires. And again, I know they wanted to go for the fantasy element, but I feel as if they kind of went a little bit too overboard with that.
Yeah, it's jarring. It's almost like I didn't know what kind of game we wanted to be, because like I said, the element with the daughters I thought was really well done. There's a bit I know you'll come on to later, brilliantly done. The rest of it just felt like it was any other action kind of game.
Especially by the end of it. Yeah. Before we go on to the next quote-unquote Lord of Unnamed Village, Resident Evil Village it's called, obviously, but you meet your wandering merchant character, who is a very portly gentleman.
Scariest thing of the game.
This is you without your vegetables. Ooh. This is what happens if he doesn't eat that stew from the beginning. He's not eating it. Yeah, you meet the Duke, who is very similar to the merchant in the 4th game. And you might think, oh, right, that's just a weird coincidence. But they do have an Easter egg where the Duke turns round and says exactly what the merchant from the 4th one says. The, what are you buying line. And then he goes, oh, it's just something one of my friends used to say. Haha. So again, he knows the merchant from 4. How the hell he got to Spain in that car, I don't know. But you meet him and he is your only ally, to be honest. I mean, Chris is there, but he tells you to bugger off at every single turn, and that is another annoying part of the story. But you find a square glass vial, don't you? And then you tell the Duke you're looking for your daughter, and he's like, why, you have someone? I don't know why he's a southern prospector all of a sudden. He's like, why, you have her in your hands, and you wipe away the dust and everything. I don't get why it's dusty though, because, well, I'll get onto that in a minute, but yeah, you find out that it's the head of your daughter, and they have basically chopped up your child and put her into different vials.
Which is horrific, right? I mean, in any world it is, but I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, same. Yeah. That really threw me, because I didn't know that twist either. I was like, holy hell, that is terrifying. And it made you angry as well. I know it sounds weird to say, but this game feels very much more like a dad core game. You know, like your God of War, your Last of Us, that kind of thing, where you're protecting your child, as it were, or trying to look for them. But yeah, I got really angry. I was like, oh hell no, I'm getting my child back. And then of course you have to explore the village if you want more weapons, and you get those bloody lichens that come out, and it's like, I don't want to fight you, you're so annoying. But then of course you get to the scariest part of the game, which again is done so well that it baffles me, and that of course is House Beneviento, which is the horror survival part of this game, isn't it?
Yeah, and shout out here to Joey of the Game Club pod, because when I was telling him at the time I was playing this, he didn't want to give any spoilers. He said, have you got to the good bit yet?
Yeah.
And I said, what do you mean? He goes, no, you'd know if you got to the good bit. And then he kept asking, he didn't spoil it. Then when I got to this bit, I messaged him and said, yeah, I've got to the good bit now. It was really well done. I mean, babies have never been as scary. It's just a really well done piece. It's probably my favourite bit of the whole game, because it's kind of got the vibes almost of 7 a little bit, and what I think, for me, true horror games are made of.
It definitely blends that sense of psychological psychological horror with what has come before, because, you know, as we were saying, you've got, oh, scary werewolves, oh, scary vampires. This is true horror. This is something I messaged you about, where I had to drop off my partner somewhere and I was waiting in the car for a couple of hours, so I was like, right, okay, I'm going to play some more of Resident Evil Village. So I took my Steam Deck out, got to that part, I turned my Steam Deck off because it was dark outside, and I was genuinely terrified. I had to actually play this with a walkthrough in the background of a very nice, I want to say Canadian chap, just talking through saying, okay, you go to this bit, you go to that bit, yep, that's fine, the baby's there, that's fine, you go there, you go here. And that really helped me through it, because if I did this on my own, I wouldn't have been able to cope. But the thing about it as well is, it's just such a thematic point as well, and this is going into some slightly sensitive territory here. They delve into, again, as I was saying, the relationship between Mia and Ethan, and I think that this game does wonders for expanding Ethan's character as a whole, because in the first one for 7, he was very much a blank slate. He was the stereotypical horror protagonist. He was like, oh, what's this? Oh, that's crazy. Whereas in this, he's a lot more emotive, he's angry, he's, you know, you can see this range of emotions. And again, shout out to Todd Soley, who does a fantastic job in this. I know maybe he's not showcased as much in the 7th game, but in this one, he shines. But in this one, you basically get your weapons taken off of you, and you have to go into this room where Mia is represented as a doll, and they play through different memories that they had together. And they're basically portraying Mia as a figure of objectification, you know, that is really interesting the way they do it, because it's obviously unsettling seeing your, well, not your wife, but a doll version of your wife, you know, just lying there lifeless. And you have to twist off each part of her body to see what is in there for the clues, for the puzzles and whatnot. And then you find out that they severely considered terminating their pregnancy with Rose because of the infection with the mold and whatnot. It's a very deep topic for a game where at the very beginning, obviously we saw her wife die and that's very tragic, but then you got attacked by werewolves, vampires and bears, oh my. You know, it just seems like a bit of a disconnect. But as you said, you go through this tunnel to a cellar that looks very birth canal-like, let's just say, and then you see pretty much, I know you said it's a baby, but I think it's more of just like this malformed fetus that will eat you if you're not quick.
God, yes, yeah.
And it horrified me because they play the baby laughter and they distort it.
Yes, that's it. Yep.
It's calling out for its mum and its dad. Oh,
and this is it. And I think this is what it does so well, because it preys on the, like you said, the whole emotional element of it. So I think things affect us more when it's almost relatable. I'm not saying like grotesque body horror / fantasy things relatable, but quickly jumping back to 7, we said about the beginning bit with the camera crew going in. I think the reason why that feels probably a lot scarier than a lot of the rest of the game is we've all been in those moments where you're in the house in the dark, or you hear a noise and you're going into a room without the light on, or, you know, in a power cut, and you can relate to that. And because this was, like you said, you've gone from leaping action style werewolves to something that plays on the primal fear of like a baby either crying or laughing, but then it's hunting you, right?
Yeah, because there's a point where you have to run to the fuse box and you feel as if you're getting chased, and I didn't even want to look round because I was just slamming the fuse into the box like go, 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 go. And once you escape that is genuinely the worst part of the game. And I mean worst as in the most horrific part. I don't mean that as in it's a bad part. It is so effective. And that's what irritates me about this, because it's done so well that you think, why couldn't the rest of the game be like this? I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong, I'm not calling for it to be as terrifying, but you look at it and you think, why couldn't they have made it more survival horror? Once you get up to the top and escape, you find the doll called Angie, who, you know, has been tormenting you all this time, and you have to run around, find her in a very vicious game of hide and seek, stab her, and it turns out you've stabbed Lady Beneviento, and you find out, and it's quite sad actually, because from what I read in the documents that you find lying around, she finds a lot of comfort in her dolls and things. She's not very talkative, and then they plant these flowers that are quite hallucinogenic, which is a very much an understatement, but that's the reason why you hallucinate everything. And then someone actually brought that up in the review. They said, you wonder if there was even a basement to begin with, because you can't go back to the basement, and then you're like, was there one? Or what's going on? And it's so terrifying, and it's so well done. And then you get to Moreau, which is a bit of a middling one, I have to say, where, as I said, he's just a fish guy with self-confidence issues. There's not really much more I can say other than, oh, you run around the water, you explode things. That's really it, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say my notes here basically from House Benevento. That was, I think, where I then felt the game just went downhill. Look, I'm not saying it's a terrible game, but I think my highlights were all really from that first half. I actually didn't like the reservoir bit.
Yeah, because I felt the puzzles were a bit, what's the right word here? I felt as if the puzzles outstayed their welcome.
Absolutely, yeah.
You just kind of sat there and thought, oh, right, okay, here's another puzzle. Oh, you have to jump across before he jumps. Oh, right. Oh, look, he's out his tank and he's stumbling towards you saying he's ugly. Oh, right, okay, bam, bam. There you go, he's dead. Right, where's Rose?
Fish monster. We got a fish monster now, basically.
Anyone who's been to a fish and chip shop after 3 in the morning, you'll know this experience. Minus the guns, obviously. But again, I wouldn't say it's bad, but after Castle Dimitrescu and House Benevento, it just kind of flopped like a wet fish.
It's not memorable. It could be in any game. It's not necessarily, you wouldn't say that that section was a Resident Evil section, or for me anyway.
But then the worst part, and again, I don't mean this as a compliment, but the worst part is once you defeat him, and I think you've got 3 out of 4, and the reason you're getting these is I think you need them to get a key to get to Mother Miranda, who, we'll get on to her, but Mother Miranda is the one who is pulling the strings and ruling over the quote-unquote 4 lords who are trying to kill you. So, of course, you dispatch a Lady Dimitrescu, which must have been a loud bang, I'm going to be honest. It's a big castle on the hill. You take out House Benevento, you take out Moreau, and then you get to Heisenberg, and Heisenberg just annoys me, I'm going to be honest. He keeps going on about how he's going to defeat Mother Miranda and he needs your help. And I don't know why, because he's got a factory full of robots.
Yeah.
Why is he waiting on Ethan specifically for his help? It makes absolutely no sense. And again, I hate his power because, yeah, sure, you could believe that, oh, she's a bioweapon that needs lots of blood. Oh, he's as stupid as it is with the fish. At least we've seen them transform into big, fantastical creatures. I can even believe the hallucinogenic flowers. I can't believe in someone with magnet powers. That's where my line of disbelief was drawn. I was like, no, okay, that's a step too far. And again, the game slogs so much. It's a bit like, you know, in 7 with the ship.
Yeah, I had to know. I related it to that, yeah.
It's like that tenfold. It's just you fight against these zombie... Basically, do you know what they remind me of? They remind me of Borg cosplayers. You know, like the Borg from Star Trek.
Yeah.
They just remind me of that. They just wander about, and I think someone actually did bring that comparison up, that they do look similar to some of the tyrants from the earlier games, which I thought, oh, that's cool. It's a shame that I have to gun down about 100 of them before I realise that, but that's cool. It was just a slog.
Yeah, and it then kind of just degenerated into an action game then, wasn't it? And look, you're going to have these moments, but I think it probably felt more of a slog because the rest of the game, like I just said, for me, the preceding section was a slog. And you had a couple of standout bits in amongst an okay game. Like I said, I'm not, I'll sum up at the end, but I'm not saying this is a bad game. It just only had a couple of real highs. And so to have 2 sections in a row where it just didn't feel compelling, it was just disappointing.
And I mean, you go full Pacific Rim by the end of it.
Yes, yeah.
It's very baffling, I'm not going to lie, where Chris eventually reveals that the reason he shot your wife was because, and I quote, "That's not your wife, Ethan." And you're like, what the frick? And again, this isn't a hot take. This is something that everybody pulls up. They say, why didn't you say this at the very beginning? And it's like, in fairness, he tries to wave it away and he says, oh, because you would have wanted to come with me, and no, this and that. I wanted you to stay out. And it's like, why did you think he would do that after you shot his wife? It seems like a bit of an odd choice, but yeah, then you learn that he's built this custom mech with a chainsaw arm and a Gatling gun. And don't get me wrong, in my heart, I think, God damn, that is so cool. But in my mind, logically, I think, God damn, that's so stupid.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to fight Heisenberg, who's turned himself into a big Gundam/mech monster.
Bizarre.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not a scene where it's like he lifts you in the air and you have to chainsaw his face as you're falling down. It's like something out of 40k.
I wouldn't even remember. I just remember, and the fact that you just said like a battle tank or whatever. It's just, what's going on?
They definitely should have reined that back in. I mean, I could understand the horror aspects of the factory, but where was he hiding that factory?
Yes.
He had the manpower already. Yeah, he didn't need Ethan. Whether he was going with him or without him, even if Ethan was like, no, I'm going to stop you, his plan would have been in motion anyway. What was he waiting for? I don't get it.
Exactly.
But then, of course, you defeat him, and then you come face to face with Mother Miranda, who, yeah, her design's cool. I'll give her that. But, yeah, what did you think before I go into the quote-unquote twist?
I think you summed it up perfectly. I think I was just trying to finish a game at that point.
When I was trying to think back of what I knew before I went into this game, I thought Lady Dimitrescu, she is the standout, no pun intended, she is the standout. Even Heisenberg stands out to a degree, and Angie as well, the doll that runs up and down. Well, Moreau's there in the background, but that's part of his character, so I can excuse that. Yeah, when Mother Miranda comes in, she's like, I am Mother Miranda. And you're like, oh, okay. Right. Is the game nearly over? And then, of course, we get the best line read by Ethan, where he tells her to F herself, that crazy B word. He shoots her, but that doesn't work. And then she does a Kalima on him and takes out his heart.
Yes, yeah.
And then he collapses and he dies. And I have to say, I knew about that, but what I didn't expect was what was going to come next. Because that had been spoiled for me, that, oh, Ethan died. And I was like, oh, great, that's the scene. So then you play as Chris Redfield, you go through your standard Call of Duty segment, and then you get to that bit. And then at the end of the Chris section, after you fight another massive werewolf, that's all I can say, just, you go to a laboratory, and I don't know if you remember this, but they try to tie in like 7 and 8 with the rest of the series, and I'm going to be honest, this is where it lost me a wee bit, where basically they revealed that, and again, I wish they explored this more, but Mother Miranda was someone who was born in the, I want to say 19th century, and she lost her child. It was very tragic. She lost her daughter, and she went into this cave where she found something called the Megamycete, which would eventually become the mold that we all know and don't love today. And yeah, the reason she wanted Rose was because she wanted to basically revive her dead daughter. And it's such a tragic story, and I wish they focused a bit more on that angle. And I know there'll be some Resident Evil fans out there saying, well, the whole point of her kidnapping Rose is she wants her daughter back. But yeah, again, just that, is especially, see, when they link her with Oswald Spencer, who you might know as the founder of Umbrella, and you're just like, we didn't need that. We didn't need this Marvel cinematic universe linking. And the thing I don't get as well is, if this is someone from the 19th century, and Oswald Spencer's whole thing was that he wanted immortality, and I think the excuse they give is, oh, he found the progenitor virus in Africa, so he's going to go explore that. And the Megamycete symbol that they found in the cave, oh, that inspires the Umbrella logo. And you're like, can you not contrive this, please? The last game was so good, guys, come on. And then, of course, the other big reveal is you find out that not only is Mia alive, for some reason locked up. I don't know why Miranda didn't just kill her off. Not that I'm mad about that, I'm just very confused. But yeah, then you find out that Ethan, and I want to know how you feel about this personally, but you find out that Ethan actually was killed in the 7th game. See the scene where he goes, welcome to the family, son, and he punches him in the face, and yeah, it turns out that killed him. But then because he was infected by the mold, that he has these regenerative abilities, yet somehow he doesn't have regenerative abilities to restore his fingers, but that's another thing. Let's not get into that. But yeah, how did you feel about that reveal?
I kind of liked that in a way. For me, it was the first almost emotional punch in the game for a while, or anything that made me really take notice of it. I think, as you said, the whole thing, the whole reveal of it trying to link in, I didn't mind it trying to do that that, but it just felt underwhelming, and it came at an underwhelming point of a game. But I like that reveal because it's almost like, you know, in a film where right at the end something gets revealed and then you have the flashbacks to all the moments. You kind of have that feeling, don't you? And you say, right, okay, so now I get why you can have his hand chopped off and, you know, he's able to heal quite easily or get stabbed or get this or that. But it also makes it quite, you know, it puts that poignant bit to it that he didn't make it out of there. And basically his whole family have been damned for, well, if you even take the 3 years she went missing in 7, about 6 or 7 years now, they've just been damned for 7 years.
Yeah, he's an unlucky chap.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him.
That, of course, culminates at the very end when you fight Mother Miranda, who feels more like a Final Fantasy villain. She's flying all over the place. You're like, oh, great, this is the Megamycete. And once you shoot her dead, then you manage to get Rose. But because you've essentially cut out the heart of the Megamycete by shooting Mother Miranda, that you yourself start to break down. And speaking of breaking down, and I don't know how you felt about the ending, but the reason I'm so conflicted about this game is because the scenes with Ethan and Rose really got to me, and I genuinely teared up at the ending of this because I don't know why, it was just so emotionally gut-wrenching. The fact that he has gone through hell, and this is why, and this is the controversial point I was saying to you before we started recording. I said, I've got a controversial point and it's not about Chris Redfield's hair. But I absolutely love Ethan Winters as a character, and I know in 7 he's a bit of a tabula rasa, he's a bit of a blank slate because he's supposed to be almost an avatar, but in this one, this is where we get to see what kind of person Ethan is. And I mean, Ethan is the person, for better or worse. His wife goes missing for 3 years, and then as soon as he gets a letter from her saying, oh hey babe, I'm in Louisiana, he books it. He just goes straight there to get his wife. And even, although it is the canonical ending, but he goes through hell just to make sure she is alright. Even in House Beneviento, when they've got the arguments and everything about keeping the baby, he is adamant. He is just such a good father figure in this game and a good husband. Honestly, if I could be half as good as that, I'd be winning, because he is just such a dedicated figure to his family. And I love that. I love that about his character, which makes it all the more heartbreaking when, you know, he takes off his jacket and everything and he wraps Rose in it and he gives her to Chris, and then he does a sleight of hand thing where he's like, whoop, I've taken the detonator. And it's just that heartbreak in the line delivery where, you know, he says goodbye Rosemary and take care of her and blah blah blah. Honestly, I was a sobbing wreck on the floor when you see him slowly walk towards the Megamycete that's just evolving, and you know that the BSA have planted bombs underneath, so they're ready just to blow the whole place sky high. But as his final act as a father and a husband, he just wants to make sure that his wife and daughter get out safe. He doesn't care about himself. All he cares about is the safety of his loved ones. And I think that is such a great character, and I think he definitely belongs in the pantheon of Resident Evil main characters. But yeah, sorry, that was a long-winded way to ask.
No. Again, the thing is, I can't disagree with what you said. It ends really well, and even the scene right at the end of the game, you know, the cut scene with Rose being a teenager, I think she is at that point, isn't she? That whole section there makes up almost for the preceding 6 or 7 hours or whatever, you know. Yeah, it kind of had more emotional content, it had more intrigue and grab your attention ability. That's not a word, but I've just said it. And yeah, because like I said, like we said with the House Benevento bit, it plays on that human emotion, that human psyche about sort of love, relationship and loss, right? And they really tap into that.
Because I mean, that is the whole theme of this game where, as you said at the very beginning, you have the storybook, and it is so heartbreaking when you realise that, and I know that sounds stupid to be like, oh Satsu, how did you not know that's what it was about? But it's just so heartbreaking to see it unfold and see a father battle for his children. These kind of games genuinely get me. I've said this a million times on Twitter with things like Gears of War with Dom and...
Oh, I know, that's a bit... I think that haunts you. I think that it haunts you.
2 bits in Gears of War that always haunt me are when he finds his wife and he just breaks down. That never fails to make me cry. And the other one when he sacrifices himself for them, and you know, he's yelling in the air, never thought it would end like this, Maria. Bloody hell. It brings a tear to your eye. But especially for this, even when I watch the ending, it is just so emotional. And even you get the rest of the story from the storybook where you see at the very end of the credits, I think it is, where you see see the father go into the forest, because you see the daughter go in and she gets attacked by all these fantastical creatures, and it's the dad that goes in and protects her. And it always gets me when there's something like that, when there's a noble sacrifice or fighting for your loved ones. It's such a human thing, and it's a departure as well from the previous games that are, again, they were more, oh look, these have gone from real relatable characters to action heroes. And I didn't like the evolution of certain people. For example, with Leon Kennedy, he's got a lot of great characterization, but always remembered for is the time he roundhouse kicked someone in Spain. You're like, well, okay. And I think it's great though, speaking of legacy characters, how that links in with Chris Redfield too. My heart went out to him as well, because this is someone who, ever since the first game, he has been fighting the clutch of Umbrella, Tricell, all of these different tendrils, as it were, of these organisations. And it feels as if every time he either loses someone or he just can't cope. If you look at the 6th game, where he loses not only his team members, which leads him into a deep depression, but he also loses his colleague Pierce, who, again, that hits him really hard, but he still soldiers on, no pun intended. It's just such a character that has seen so much loss. And I can't believe that the ending feels the most human, if that makes sense, compared to the rest of the game.
Absolutely. I think that's probably my main, or another gripe with this, so is Ethan is a great character, but it felt really rushed at the end, putting in that emotional beat right at the end. You know, I just have to agree with what you're saying. It feels like we've got very similar thoughts on the double set of games, yeah.
No, absolutely. It's a weird entry into the series, I have to say, because I wouldn't say this is a bad game overall. I wouldn't say, oh, it's the worst game ever, because gameplay-wise, it plays really well. It plays relatively similar, albeit I would say resource-wise, you get a lot more pockets for your resources. For your guns, for your herbs and things. But with the 7th game, it's definitely more scarce. It's survival horror. You have to manage what you're going to carry and what you're not, which I think that's so interesting to see that they kept it quite limited for 7 and that added to the horror. But then you get to 8 and it's like, oh, right, okay, we've got hundreds of slots for a rocket launcher and a Gatling gun. Yay, I love action. One thing before we wrap up that I want to touch on is, of course, the Village of Shadows DLC. And also, did you know this game can be played in third person as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was released as DLC, which I find quite interesting, but I see what you mean. I don't think this game would have been effective, or rather as effective, in third person on the outset. But the one thing I hate about Ethan Winters is the fact they never show his face. I don't know why. We've seen his face in promotional material, so I don't, even in the cover of this game, Google the cover, I'm sure it's Chris Redfield that's on the cover.
Well, the interesting thing I learned when I watched the video today is, so you know at the end of the game where you see Rose as a, well, I say grown up, she's like a teenager, isn't she? And they're driving off. There's a character on the road in the distance, and they found it out that they've used his model. Now, not to say that he's alive or anything, they probably just wanted to put a mysterious character on the road, but people have gone in and seen it's Ethan's character model. But I did get the impression that it felt like, well, I thought, because I've not played the DLC, which you just said, it felt like there was going to be another game in this series, but it doesn't seem like that is now, right?
I don't know where they're going to go with that particular storyline in the future, because they've kind of wrapped it up and they've spoiled it essentially in the DLC, where you find out Chris looks after Rose as she grows up. So he's still fighting bioweapons and BOWs all the way through to his old age. So you're like, right, okay, he's not going to die in the next game like Requiem or anything like that. Also, fun fact, you know how Resident Evil Requiem is based on one of the spin-off characters' daughters?
Yes, yeah.
So her name's Grace Ashcroft, but her mum is Alicia Ashcroft, who is the reporter in, I want to say, Resident Evil Outbreak. But if you look at some of the news articles, I know there's one in 8, but I can't remember if there's one in 7. I think it's the reporter who reports on the events from 7, but that's Alicia Ashcroft.
Yeah, Yeah, I remember digging into that at the time because I remember getting it wrong after seeing the reveal, because I love seeing how games inadvertently link to other ones. I think we said 8 did it clumsily, but I'm hoping, 9, they can do something a little bit more structured.
Well, I mean, it's that old good, bad, good, bad.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
We're on the good game here, so come on, Resident Evil 9, don't disappoint us.
I think for me to sum up, said I love 7 for the horror vibe. Having said I love 7, I don't like always feeling too tense during a game and too stressed, and I felt a lot less stressed playing 8. And you said it, I think the gunplay, that it felt like it played well. It's just 7 felt far more engaging than 8 did, bar 2 points and the ending.
Whereas it almost feels like the opposite for this, doesn't it? Where it's like the ending is the most compelling part of this game. And that leads me, before, of course, we wrap up, and I did say that before, apologies, but before we wrap up, there is the Village of Shadows DLC, which is absolutely horrifying, I have to say, because that is all in third person, and you play as Rose, who gets duped into entering this almost mind palace of the Megamycete, because growing up she gets these mold powers, so she's under close observation. Mia is nowhere to be seen. For some reason they keep them separated. I don't know why, but hey ho, we might find that out later. But yeah, you play as her and you go into twisted versions of the main game. So you go into Lady Dimitrescu's castle, but instead of Lady Dimitrescu, it is all of these zombie type creatures that just want to eat you. And there's some horrific deaths in this, I have to say, which I was a bit uncomfortable at. I was like, oh, this isn't great. But it's the Duke, who he was your only friend, and apparently there was some cut content there where he was supposed to be the 5th Twist Lord or something, but they cut that out of the game. So in this one, he gets to be full on evil. He's trying to harness your power. Along the way, you get helped by this mysterious magical text, which, spoilers, it turns out to be your father in the end, which I don't think anyone was surprised at that. But you go through other places like House Beneviento, which is twofold, because in the first part, there's a scene where you see, the doll from Mia, where you had to inspect it, only that moves when you're not looking at it, and it moves in the most creepy way possible. I kept getting caught by it. It was absolutely terrifying. It was probably just as terrifying as the baby, I'm going to be honest. It was just as terrifying. But then you go through a almost Alice in Wonderland situation where you get shrunk down, but you have to avoid all of these dolls and everything coming at you. There's even a mini boss fight where you have to fight Evelyn, of all people, and she's like, they don't love you, and you fight against her. But then there's a beautiful scene, and I think this part really hit a lot of people in the feels, as it were, where you get to revisit the house from the beginning of the game, and it's all set up for the baby. And I mean, maybe it's a bit cheesy in some bits, but I still thought it was done really effectively, where you get to see Rose basically see what her dad's hopes and dreams were for her, like saying, oh, Rose likes this kind of music, I wonder if she's going to be a musician, I wonder if she's going to be an artist, she's going to be this or that, oh, I love her so much, and oh, I'm so proud of you, Rose, and things. And I think for a lot of people, especially who have gone through that loss of a parental figure or a parent, I've heard lots of people really get emotional over it, and I can see why. It is just, oh god, it hits you in the feels, because you see her not break down, but she just sobs, and you're sobbing with her. This is a girl who, she was born out of mold, let's face it, and there's a particular scene in the House Beneviento sequence where you have to find dolls that recreate moments of her life when she was younger and she was getting bullied and sprayed at with bleach and things because she had all this mold coming out her hands, and she's very nonchalant about it, saying, yeah, I get it. And it's a horrific upbringing that she's not had a father figure in her life, and her mum's been kept away. Well, the BSA keep a close eye on her. It's so damn sad. But then eventually at the very end, she gets to the heart of it, and it turns out, spoilers, that Mother Miranda orchestrated the whole thing, and she wants to take over her body, but she doesn't have her powers. And then lo and behold, Ethan manifests himself. And again, it sounds like bad fan fiction and things where it's like, oh, and Ethan came with a shotgun and he does does, by the way. But there's a heartbreaking moment where he tries to stop Mother Miranda and he keeps yelling at Rose saying, get out of here, live a normal life and everything, don't worry about me. And the screams of pain are just, oh, they're chilling. But then she decides, nope, I'm going to stay my ground. She smashes the gem that would have got rid of her powers and she fights Mother Miranda in a very anime-esque scene, not going to lie. But eventually she finally gets to say goodbye to her father. And it's such a heartbreaking moment. But at the same time, it's like a bittersweet ending, which then, of course, links on to the graveyard scene at the very end. I don't know. I think that is the annoying thing about the main game as a whole, that it had a chance to be very emotionally hard-hitting, which it does when it does. Oh, God, it does the job well when it does the horror in Village of Shadows or even in House Beneviento or even Lady Dimitrescu's Castle. Excellent. But in the bits that flop and sag, they really, really sag.
Yeah.
I think that there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way that they do that. The other thing as well, this is going to sound really weird, but do you think the music in 7 was more iconic than 8? And by that, I mean the Aunt Rhody song. They play.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it, but yeah.
The only reason I bring that up, and trust me, it's the last point, but it's just that bit at the beginning where they take a Southern American folk song about a group trying to say, go tell Aunt Rhody that her, I think it's her grey goose, has died, and it's all about the family coming together and having to deal with this sudden loss and death and so on. Whereas they remix it in this one, and it's a very uncanny feeling because it's supposed to be a folk song that's been twisted and corrupted like the mould usually does, and it's like, oh, go tell Aunt Rhody that everybody's dead, not just the goose, but the men and the women and children. Yeah, it's quite hard-hitting, but yeah, I can only echo what you said there, that I feel as if out the two of them, 7 is the stronger one in terms of survival horror, in terms of atmosphere. It's just a shame about the ending, whereas 8, I love the characters, I love the payoff, but I just wish it didn't sag as much.
Yeah.
Overall, I think these two games, although they're completely different from one another, I do think that they are worth playing together. I don't think you can get the full Ethan Winters experience, as stupid as that sounds, without playing them.
Ethan Winters doesn't have the complete Ethan Winters experience with all the bits chopped off.
He doesn't even get his full trilogy, does he?
Yeah, well, yeah.
But yeah, on that note, Dan, thank you so much for putting up with the horror of these games, because they are terrifying, and I am so glad that you got to do them with me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for putting me through more horror. Yeah. And that's playing the games, not this, of course. It's just...
Oh, of course, yeah.
No, always a pleasure, always a pleasure.
And of course, before we wrap up, and my producer is tapping me in the shoulder right now saying, please finish up, we need a walk. Where can these amazing Pandalorians find your content?
Well, firstly, thanks again. I always love coming on here and love our conversations. You always choose really good games and have fantastic conversations with you. So thank you for that. You can find me a couple of places. So podcast called Casting Views. It's on a bit of a break at the moment for a number of reasons, but one of the main ones was I've started another, well, I say started, it's been going since May now, I think, Gaming Views with my wonderful friend and co-host Dan H, where we just talk about, we've been gaming for so long between the two of us that we kind of just talk of random subjects. So I think we've done, at time recorded, we did an episode on video game cliches, we've discussed physical v digital, Super Nintendo, etc. It's random stuff, but all in the video game world. So yeah, you can find that on all your podcast platforms and YouTube and social media at Gaming Views.
And if you would like to check out more episodes from Resident Evil Month, as well as some amazing collaborations between ourselves, then you can check us out on our website, Satsunami.com, as well as all good podcast apps. I also want to thank our amazing Pandalorian patrons for supporting the show: Robotic Battle Toaster, Ghostie, and Cryptic 1991. Thank you so much. And if you would like access to exclusive episodes, bonus content, even early access, as well as Dan's full playthrough of Resident Evil 7 and the baby house, for legal reasons that last one's a joke, then you can check us out at patreon.com/Chatsunami. This podcast is of course a proud member of the PodPack Collective. For more information, check us out at our Twitter/X page, PodPack Collect. But as always, thank you all so much for joining us on this Resident Evil journey. As always, stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, stay hydrated.